And Dallas has adjusted with the Aces, going with this small lineup. 4 guards, and none better than Arike Ogunbowale.
The rain pelted against the hospital windows in relentless sheets, mirroring the storm in Rebecca Martinez's chest as she clutched the termination letter in her trembling hands. A document that marked the sudden, unceremonious end of a career she had spent 8 years building as a patient advocate at St. Mary's Medical Center in Des Moines. A career she had devoted herself to with tireless compassion and unwavering integrity, only to have it stripped away because she had prioritized humanity over rigid protocol. Yet as she packed her belongings into a cardboard box, unaware of the future that awaited her, little did she know that the homeless man she had defended in the emergency room that fateful November evening would soon reveal a connection that would alter the course of both their lives in ways neither could have imagined. And it all began with a phone call she initially ignored, her supervisor's sharp, impatient voice finally cutting through the evening quiet, instructing her that there was a man causing a disturbance in the ER, that security needed her assistance, and despite it being past her shift, Rebecca's instinct to help overrode exhaustion as she hurried into the hospital, where the scene that greeted her was heartbreaking. A man in his late 20s, Dylan Matthews, hunched and battered, his left arm hanging awkwardly, bruises and blood marking his face, clearly homeless, and yet there was a dignity in his brown eyes, a quiet intelligence that drew her in, and when she asked gently about his injuries, she learned that he had been attacked while sleeping in an alley, beaten by 3 men who stole his backpack containing his few possessions, including his identification, forcing him to crawl 6 blocks to the hospital in agony. And despite the objections of security citing insurance and policy, Rebecca's heart ignited with defiance at a system that measured human worth by paperwork and money, compelling her to fight relentlessly for Dylan's care, arguing with administrators, completing emergency indigent care forms, vouching for his character personally, and even using her own credit card to cover prescriptions when the pharmacy refused, all while learning fragments of his past. A college graduate whose ambitions had been derailed by mental health struggles and a series of devastating losses, yet who spoke with nostalgia and tenderness about a childhood friend, Caitlin Clark, a girl from West Des Moines with whom he had shared countless hours practicing basketball, dreaming of a future that now seemed impossibly distant. And as Rebecca helped him into a clean hospital gown, Dylan revealed that Caitlin had grown into a professional basketball star for the Indiana Fever, a revelation that hit Rebecca with the force of a physical blow, connecting the broken man before her with one of the most celebrated figures in the state. Yet before she could fully process the significance, her supervisor appeared, cold and accusing, informing her that she had violated multiple protocols and was being suspended pending investigation. And despite her protest that she had acted with integrity, the hospital demanded she clear out her office, leaving her to navigate the crushing reality of losing 8 years of dedication for choosing compassion over bureaucracy. While driving Dylan to a nearby shelter that night, her mind raced with ethical and emotional dilemmas. Should she tell him of the connection she had discovered? Should she somehow reach out to Caitlin? But Dylan, exhausted and in pain, had fallen asleep, and she could not bring herself to wake him. And 3 days later the termination letter arrived, read amidst the mundane rhythms of home life as her 7-year-old daughter, Sophia, ate cereal at the kitchen table, looking up with innocent concern and asking why her mother was crying, leaving Rebecca to explain, as best she could, that sometimes doing the right thing comes at a personal cost, that standing up for some, when no one else may jeopardize your own security, a lesson difficult to translate to a child, yet essential in its honesty. And over the following 2 weeks, Rebecca tirelessly sought new employment while visiting Dylan at the shelter, observing him slowly heal physically while his emotional wounds remained raw, and he recounted memories of his youth with Caitlin, the basketball games in her backyard, the small triumphs and dreams shared before life had pulled them apart, stories Rebecca listened to with empathy, recognizing in them the threads of resilience and hope that had always defined her own approach to advocacy. And in the quiet moments between hospital visits and job applications, she reflected on the fragility of systems that prioritize policy over people, the courage required to challenge authority when morality demands it, and the unpredictable ways in which acts of compassion can ripple outward, weaving connections that reshape lives. As she contemplated the possibility that this chance encounter with Dylan Matthews and his link to Caitlin Clark could open doors not only to professional redemption but to a profound, human story of friendship, loyalty, and the enduring impact of choosing empathy over convenience. A story that would test her principles, reveal hidden truths, and ultimately reaffirm that the measure of a person is not found in the rules they follow or the recognition they receive, but in the courage to act for the sake of others, even when the world turns its back. And as Rebecca watched Dylan rest in the dim light of the shelter, she understood that her fight, though costly, had created a bridge between past and present, between lost dreams and the possibility of reconnection, setting in motion a chain of events that would challenge assumptions, heal old wounds, and demonstrate in the most tangible way the transformative power of standing firmly on the side of humanity, even when it comes at the expense of everything. She thought defined her career and sense of security, a lesson she would carry with her long after the rain ceased and the storm inside and outside had passed. A reminder that one act of courage, one refusal to let protocol overshadow compassion, could change the trajectory of lives in ways no one could predict, binding the fate of a once-forgotten young man to her own, and through him to the extraordinary life of Caitlin Clark, whose path, intersecting now with Dylan's and Rebecca's, would test the very boundaries of loyalty, justice, and the quiet heroism that often goes unnoticed in the corridors of power, yet defines the essence of true advocacy, leaving Rebecca to confront not just the consequences of her actions, but the profound, unfolding story of human resilience, reconnection, and the unpredictable miracles that emerge when courage, empathy, and moral clarity intersect in the lives of those willing to stand up when it matters most.
She was always about passing, and I'm glad to see her shooting more. And she said, I hope she has another big one tonight.
Oh, that's great, Gianna. And what these coaches can do, they can really...
Point one afternoon in the shelter's common room, Dylan Matthews looked up at Rebecca Martinez with a wistful expression, his eyes reflecting both pain and memory, and said softly, "She was the kind of person who would give you her last dollar if you needed it. I wonder if she ever thinks about the kids she grew up with." And those words struck Rebecca deeply, igniting a decision that terrified her but felt undeniably right. That night, she sat at her desk, scrolling through Caitlin Clark's official social media accounts, composing a message that took over an hour to perfect, explaining who she was, detailing Dylan's story, and including a treasured photograph from his wallet, a snapshot of two children on a basketball court, laughing, one boy, one girl, the past captured in a moment of pure joy, and with a trembling hand she pressed send, trying not to hope too much. Yet 2 days later her phone rang, an unfamiliar number illuminating the screen, and when she answered, the warm, slightly breathless voice on the other end said, "Is this Rebecca Martinez? This is Caitlin Clark. I got your message about Dylan Matthews." And for a moment the world seemed to pause, the silence charged with recognition and disbelief, Caitlin's sharp intake of breath bridging decades as she processed that the Dylan before her, weathered and changed, was the boy she had grown up with on Maple Street, her closest friend. And in a flurry of movement and emotion, Caitlin immediately cleared her schedule and within hours was on her way to Des Moines, driven by a mix of curiosity, longing, and the unshakable bond of childhood friendship. And when she arrived at the shelter's visitor room, Dylan looked up from the book he was reading and froze, his eyes wide, uncomprehending, and then recognition blossomed in the simplest, most profound way. "Dylan Matthews?" she whispered, tears streaming. "You're still reading during the day instead of playing basketball." And he rose slowly, his arms still tender, from injury, trembling with disbelief, as they embraced, clinging not just to each other but to the years of shared memory and the friendship that had never truly faded. While Rebecca watched from the corner, tears rolling down her cheeks as she witnessed the raw power of connection, of time and distance undone by a single act of compassion. And over the next hour, the room overflowed with stories. Caitlin recounted her rise to basketball stardom, the pressures and triumphs. Dylan spoke of his mental health struggles, the devastating losses that had led him to the streets, yet always circling back to their childhood, to the games in the backyard, to the lessons learned about joy, perseverance, and friendship, until Caitlin paused and said with gentle certainty, "Dylan, every time I step onto that court, I think of those games. You taught me that basketball isn't about winning or losing, it's about joy." And that moment became a catalyst, not just for emotional restoration, but for tangible, life-altering action. as Caitlin immediately offered Dylan a position through the Caitlin Clark Foundation as a community outreach coordinator. Someone uniquely equipped to connect with and uplift those experiencing homelessness, while simultaneously ensuring Rebecca, whose career had been jeopardized at St. Mary's for choosing compassion over policy, was brought on as the Director of Community Advocacy, giving her the platform and security to continue championing the vulnerable, and the ripple effect was immediate. The foundation partnered with St. Mary's to implement new protocols ensuring that uninsured patients would never again be dismissed or neglected.